Hello, I'm Doug Musio. This is City Talk. He manages $140.6 billion in state pension funds. He audits the spending of all state agencies and local governments. He reviews the New York City and New York State budgets. He must approve all state contracts. He said it's time for New York to get transformative or else. He's Thomas DiNapoli, the controller of the state of New York, and he's here to talk New York State and city budgets, Wall Street, Main Street, recession, job loss, money, and Albany's decreasing dysfunction. Mr. DiNapoli was named controller in February 2007 and elected to the position in November 2010. Previously, he had served in the Assembly for 20 years, representing the 16th Assembly District in northwestern Nassau County. Welcome, Mr. Controller. It's always a pleasure.
Doug, it's great to be back.
Congratulations on your election. We had a show just about a year ago. It seems that Albany's a little bit less dysfunctional this year.
I think that's fair to say. One of the biggest tests of that is the budget process, and certainly with a new governor in town that made a priority of getting the budget done on time, the legislature wisely bought into that strategy, and we had an on-time budget, a tough budget, but the process worked more smoothly than it has in a long time.
Okay, just briefly about the governor, relations with the governor personally?
Well, the governor and I have certainly talked a number of times since Election Day. So I'd say those relations are cordial on a personal level. Institutionally, controllers and governors always, and any executive, there's always a tension that goes with the different institutional roles, but at a personal level, they're cordial relations, as they should be.
But not warm, they're cordial. They're correct.
Yeah, look,
bygones are bygones.
Bygones are bygones, and it's great to win an election in one's own right, and to be here as the people's controller, elected by the voters. So,
and it's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah.
I mentioned powers of the state controller in the intro. Any I've missed, or any that you wish you had? You have a wish list. What one power that you don't have now as controller would you like?
Well, I would like to see a more clear authority in the early part of the budget process in terms of the revenue decisions that are being made. That worked pretty well this year, but there are years where at the beginning of the process, the legislature and the governor come up with a revenue number, and very often they change that number when it gets closer to the deadline, and then you end up with a budget that's put together on overly optimistic revenue projections. Under the statute right now, if they don't agree, the controller then steps in and offers a number, although under the law that's not a binding number. So I like to see a little more power given on the revenue side, although generally I very much respect the way the Constitution sets up this office, which is to be a watchdog, not to be another legislator or another governor, but to shed a light and to leave the policy decisions ultimately to those who are elected to do that, the members of the Senate, the members of the Assembly, the governor. Sometimes people say, well, you're the controller, you're in charge of the budget. No, I'm not in charge of the budget. I'm in charge of making sure that when the budget's put together, the money's being spent the right way through the contracts, through our audits. And I comment on the budget. When executive proposals put forward, we'll say what we think is good and bad about it, what's strong, what's weak. When the budget is adopted, we'll put forward our analysis of risks that we see in the budget, and then we'll monitor the spending on an ongoing basis. So it's an appropriate role. You don't want the controller to be the one substituting his or her decisions for what the governor and the legislature are expected to do.
One other power is that you're the sole keeper of $141 billion in state pensions. Is there any other jurisdiction in the United States where one individual controls an entire state or large city's pensions like you do?
A couple of thoughts on it. There are other states, although it's obviously the minority. Connecticut, North Carolina, and the one or two other states that have a hybrid system. More typically, you have boards, which is what you have in the city. But you know, I do think it's important, Doug, to point out that sole trustee does not mean that Tom DiNapoli, whoever the controller is, wakes up every morning, picks up the Wall Street Journal, says, sell this, buy this.
It may work better. No.
No.
Go ahead.
We have a very elaborate process with staff review, paid consultants and advisors. We also have advisory committees. I find that ironic. People say, well, there should be an advisory committee. But, well, we have a real estate advisory committee, investment advisory committee. And actually, I'm looking at beefing up the role of especially that investment advisory committee. So I want to assure your viewers that when an investment decision is made, my role as trustee is to make sure that our policies and procedures are being followed. And we're doing more in terms of transparency and ethical decision making in light of what happened with my predecessor, Alan Hevesy. But I am not the sole decider on investments. We are very much guided by our professional staff, and I make sure it's being done the right way. Some of the problems, I'll end on this and we'll take it where you want to go. But some of the problems that we had with the Hevesy era, which people
That's where I want to go anyway. Go ahead.
The same thing, you have investigations going on in California right now. The Blagojevich, whatever his name is, some of his charges related to pension manipulation with a board where he had appointments, New Mexico. You go to many states, they have the same issues. Whether the structure is a board or a sole trustee, if you have corrupt people doing the wrong thing, you're going to have a problem. The structure in of itself does not determine the outcome. What we need to do in New York, though, because we had a big problem, obviously. My predecessor's in jail now.
Right.
We have made many changes, starting with eliminating placement
What's
agents.
different with the controller's office and processes under Tom DiNapoli than Alan Hevesy?
The biggest change, because so much of the Hevesy corruption involved the placement agent relationships.
Right.
We back, shortly after I took office, we realized there were some problems here. We changed to a full disclosure policy. When then Attorney General Cuomo had his investigation, the initial charges, how corrupt that relationship was, with one placement agent in particular, we took the additional step back in 2009 to prohibit any fund transaction involving a placement agent, paid intermediary of any kind, a lobbyist. So we've taken out the middle person. That's the biggest change. We also, ahead of the SEC, implemented prohibitions on pay-to-play, which has been another issue. We now do...
Define pay-to-play.
Well, it's the notion that if an investment firm makes contributions, they're going to get favorable treatment in terms of investment decisions. It's tricky in terms of your prohibit. And from my point of view, we need campaign finance reform, severe limits on contributions, and public financing. So middle-class guys like me can compete. I had a tough race last year, largely because the fellow running against me, successful Wall Street guy, put in $4 million of his own money and raised millions more. I was way outspent. I didn't have that kind of personal money to put in. We should have a level playing field by having campaign finance reform that allows for public finance of campaigns. But we're doing more with strengthening those advisory committees, being sure we have transparency in terms of monthly reporting of our investment transactions. When I got there, every year there was a big annual report. You had to go through it to figure out who got the money. Now, every month, we report on where our money is being put. So we've had a series of reforms. We had a pension task force that reviewed what we were doing. It's a different place in terms of how it's run right now.
Okay. So let's talk about how is the pension fund doing? I mean, the last time we talked, it wasn't that swift.
Yeah. Well, the good news is we are always better than everybody else. New York is the best funded state pension fund of any in the country. Pew Center has put out another report recently, continues to show that. And like all investors, large investors like pension funds and others, the markets obviously have come back. So we're continuing to see growth. In fact, you mentioned the 141 or so figure, our estimate as of the end of calendar year 2010. When we do our number for March 31st of this year, that's our key number because that's the end of our fiscal year. That's how we value the fund that gets into the contribution rates. I think we're going to be even higher than 141. Are we back to 155, which was our peak before the crash? No, but when you keep in mind that we pay out over $7 billion a year in benefits, and you add 140 or plus what we paid out the past couple of years, obviously we are in strong shape. And that's an important message to get out. You hear of other states like Illinois, they're like, 50% funded? They haven't paid their pension bills. New Jersey.
Excuse me, I live in New Jersey.
New Jersey.
I know, tell me.
And your governor there is talking about all these great, but they're still not paying their bills.
No.
In New York, we pay our bills. That's why we've had the best funded pension plan. And our investment strategy is with a long-term horizon, a perpetual one, really. So keep in mind, That's over $7 billion paid out in benefits, $140 billion, probably higher right now. We have way in excess of what we need. The challenge is we're making decisions for the man or the woman who's going to enter state or local service today, retiring 30 years from now. And that's where we're still absorbing the impact of the big market loss in 08 and 09. But as long as the markets stay strong, as long as we have confidence in our diversified investment strategy, we're going to be in strong.
We're going to come back to pensions, but let's talk about the budget and the state fisc. What were your reactions to the state budget? One of your press releases on March 31st, you talked about the budget quote, beginning to align current expenses and revenues. So it's a first step. What exactly is the nature of this first step, and what are the subsequent steps that you see that ought to occur?
Yeah. Well, tough decisions on spending. New York has had budgets for too long that relied on revenue assumptions that were way inflated in terms of the reality, ending up with budget gaps in the middle of the year, cutbacks, delays in funding. We were on this vicious cycle. We had to end that. And the governor put forward an executive budget proposal which tackled the spending issue and understood that New York is a very highly taxed state and a very highly indebted state, and we needed to address the spending issue. So I think the parameters of what the governor put forward, which is largely what the legislature ratified in the final budget agreement, it made sense in the face of the current fiscal reality. You can debate some of the policy choices, spend more money here, less here, but in terms of the overall parameters, assuming this economy continues this recovery, which is very slow and tentative, and I'm concerned about that, but as long as it keeps moving in the right direction, this budget should hold together. We need it to. We have to monitor the spending very carefully. If the economy takes a dip in the wrong way, we may have to do some adjustments even within this budget year. I'm not predicting it, but that's what we have to look at. And we still have some out-year gaps. They're significantly reduced from what they were a year ago, but so much of our state's fiscal health is tied to the health of the economy. The city as well, same issue. Wall Street, of course, has come back. They had a great year last year. But Wall Street,
phenomenal year. What was it?
Second
21
best.
billion?
Yeah, second
best.
best. But Wall Street is not the only part of our economy, and that the revenue that's generated from that sector is not as big a share of the revenue picture as it once was. We're a big state, so the city certainly hasn't been hit as hard and is coming out of it more quickly. But you go to many of the areas upstate, and there's still great struggles. Housing market is still a real problem. In fact, in some parts of our state, we're seeing the values going down. They were starting to go up, now they're going down again. Unemployment still, over 8%, a little better than it was, but this is still, as too many people are calling it, a jobless recovery. We need people to be back to work. That's our biggest source of revenue is the personal income tax revenue. That's tied to employment
How do we
levels.
do that? I know you're not an executive, but how do we do that? And living upstate part of the year, that economy is devastated.
Yeah. Well, there are many things we have to do. I think having a responsible state budget as an underpinning is part of it. What we're trying to do with the limited role that our office plays, we've added more money to the New York Business Development Corporation for small business loans. A lot of this recovery, I think, is not going to be with big firms. It's going to be with small businesses. We need to promote more growth there. I'm also doing more with our pension fund to invest within New York State. We have an in-state private equity program. I've doubled the amount of money available. We're starting to see some deal flow again, where we're investing in businesses that are willing to relocate here to New York, start up here in New York, or if they're here, expand in New York, so that when they grow, they can grow jobs here as well. That's just a small piece of it. The governor, as part of the budget in the legislature, they're setting up these regional economic development councils.
You're sanguine about this?
Well, we'll see. I mean, we need to do something different.
Right.
And Lieutenant Governor Bob Duffy, great guy. He's going to be the point person on seeing that they work. It's going to have a regional focus, so what may work in the Binghamton area will be different than New York City or Long Island, so that's good. Ken Adams is now heading the Economic Development Division for the state. He was head of the Brooklyn Chamber for years and a business council, so he's a smart guy. But there's a lot we need to do, and there's a lot that's out of our control. National issues, national decisions. We don't control gasoline prices and the price of oil. We see the impact that's having. So certainly, I'm concerned with what's happening in Washington. I don't like a lot of things that the new House majority is doing. I don't think that's going to help any of us. So there are a lot of issues at stake. As a state, we do the best we can to grapple with it, but having a state budget that's in balance and one where local governments, hospitals, school districts can depend on the money that we say in April is going to be there having that kind of discipline in place, which is what the governor and legislature, I think, took an important first step to achieve, that's going to help the economy.
But in this alignment of expenses and revenues, it was all done on the expense side. The governor and then ultimately the legislature rejected the revenue side. A millionaire's tax, for example, misnamed and then ultimately correctly named. There's no revenue enhancement. Is that, comment on that, if you would.
You know, again, a couple of things on that. You know, first of all, what we look to is, do the numbers add up? The legislature, the governor make the decisions on what they're going to do. So when I was a legislature, I had opinions on some of that. But keep in mind, New York has never been shy.
Opinions now.
Well, but New York has never been shy about taxes and fees. We all know that. So we pay a lot in taxes and fees right now, and you do reach a certain breaking point. And in terms of debt, in good times we've borrowed. So our debt capacity is severely limited. Debt service is one of the fastest growing parts of the New York State budget. So there were real limitations. If you're going to long-term have a budget imbalance that doesn't break the bank or break taxpayers, you could argue the millionaire's tax. Look, you're right. It was the name wasn't quite right, and it was already on the book. So if you had extended it, was that a new tax?
Right.
But you know what? The governor said no. It considered an extension like a new tax. So it was clear from the beginning that was going to be a non-starter. Long term, do we have to look at issues about tax policy in our state? I think it would make sense. The gap between rich and poor, forget about poor, rich and middle class, let alone poor,
Tell me.
is growing exponentially. So the issues of tax policy are still there, need to be dealt with. In the context of this particular budget, though, there's no doubt in my mind we needed to tighten our belts on spending. New York families have been doing that at home for a long time. New York businesses, the state needed to do it as well. We always, though, have to keep in mind and not be cavalier about it. Hospitals, school districts, New York City, small cities, towns, and villages, they depend on state resources. So some of the pain of this budget, we're going to start to see outside of the city where they vote on school budgets. You're going to start to see there are layoffs. Some people may not be happy about that. So this is still a picture that's evolving.
Talk about the school districts. I mean, clearly, several of your more recent reports have talked to the issue of the various reserves in school districts and the impact. Generally speaking, what are the types of impacts that school districts will have to deal with in terms of financing current programming?
Well,
if they do,
in the short run, more tough decisions. So for the city was expecting more in education aid than they got. That was a big issue, as you know. And the mayor obviously is still talking about layoffs.
Excuse me.
there.
I mean, but the mayor and the governor, I mean, they were firing at each other back and forth, and the staffs too. At one point, they thought they were going to do liar, liar, pants on fire. It got pretty acrimonious.
Yeah. But there are consequences of that. There was less than the city had anticipated. For school districts outside the city, as you point out, we did a study. We showed many of them had reserves, excess reserves, besides the undesignated fund balance, money stranded in reserves that they didn't really have any need for. But even for those districts, if they access reserves to make up for the money they're not getting from the state, for most of those districts, it's a one-year solution.
Right.
So we're going to be back looking at these questions again next year. And not all districts have reserves.
Right, and also, I mean, suppose if you have a property tax cap, what impact does that have on local governmental jurisdictions and school boards?
That's going to be a big issue between now and the end of session. And the question is, how do what will the cap look like if you have one? Will there be any exceptions to it? And that's what the legislative debate will be. So that's why I say these issues are still going to be there, because these are also still very important investments for people. And one of the concerns I have when we look at unemployment in the state, and we know that's a big issue, we're starting to see job growth again in the private sector, tentative and slow, but we're seeing some jobs being added, even on Wall Street and beyond. But where are we seeing job loss? In the public sector.
Right.
And at a certain point, I think we have to acknowledge that whoever's being laid off, private sector, it's not good. We're at a time we need people working. We need the money to be spent in the local economies, people paying taxes, staying in their homes. So we need to keep a focus at the state level, at the local level, and the national level. How do we get employment back going?
But what you're suggesting is the way you get employment going is you keep people employed and earning money, and therefore spending it and having it bounce around in the economy.
I've always been of the opinion that that work is a very important thing for everybody to have. We talked about pensions earlier. The average retiree pension for our state system, the one that I'm trustee for the employers' retirement system, is about $18,000.
Okay.
It's not a big
Wait
pension,
a minute. Go ahead.
but 80% of our retirees continue to live in New York State. It's close to $6 billion in benefits that recycle right here into the New York State economy. People stay in their homes, they pay their taxes, they shop locally. We need to look at all of these issues, not just for what the so-called cost is, but what is the investment return? What's the multiplier effect? And we want our retirees to continue to stay in New York. We want that money to make the difference for them to stay here and spend their money here.
So the public sector unions and their pension funds aren't the bête noires of this fiscal situation?
Certainly not in my opinion. Are there some cases of excess? Absolutely. Do you have some folks that end up with a six-figure pension that probably shouldn't have, and we need to look at how some of that has happened? No question about it. But that's not the vast majority of people who are in the system. And I do think a defined benefit system is a smarter and more efficient way to provide retirement security. You know, the private sector.
Then what?
Than defined contribution.
Okay, so.
Which I know is where many, not all, in the private sector have been moving towards. And
in fact, CUNY professors have a defined contribution system rather than a defined benefit.
But, you know, I think the reality is that in the long run, in terms of how fragile retirement security is for Americans, there were some mistakes in moving to 401ks. And I don't know that means we need to tear down those that have had the defined benefit. You know, another important figure, over 80% of the benefits that have been paid, including the year of 08-09 where we had that big meltdown from our system, have come from investment return. You know, not from taxpayers or from employees. So
the value of the portfolio itself
still drives most of it. So that's why.
Okay.
So when we had that market loss, we have rates going up now. There's a new tier at the state level.
Right.
Tier 5, you know, that's going to have an impact. There's some discussion. There may be a tier 6 proposal. We'll see. So there, you know, New York has been, again, unlike some other states, we have been making changes. You know, there are, you know, for a person now, they double the time to vest, caps on overtime that could be applied to pensions, lifetime contributions for any new state or local employee. And already in our system, after just 1 year of the new tier, we have about 28,000 people already in that new tier. So there has been some turnover. So, and I think you have to also look at this. When you pool capital and you professionally manage it, you can get a strong return. If you say we're going to take the employee contributions, and there'll still be some employer contributions, the pensions aren't going to be cost-free no matter how you do it, and say you make the decisions, you know, we know what's going to happen. You come into a bad year like we had. Most people don't have professional expertise or knowledge. You know, what's going to happen? How vulnerable are we going to make people? So this whole issue of retirement security, I think, needs to be looked at in a more intelligent way, not in an emotional way we're looking at now. And who's going to benefit most? You know, if everybody suddenly has to have other people manage their money, it's those that are managing money. They're going to get the fees. And I don't...
Isn't that the way American capitalism works?
Well, I prefer the way we pool the capital now. There are some fees that are being paid, but when you look at the studies that I've seen, you know, those that have studied it, it's more efficient to have a defined benefit system than to say to everybody, here's some money, we'll match what you put in and go off and figure out how to do it. You know, all those that benefit most will be the money managers, not the people who need the retirement security.
Okay, let's talk, I mean, we have a couple of minutes left. Let's talk about debt reform. It's 60 billion plus now. It's going to be 68 billion in another 4 years. You've talked a lot about debt reform. Talk about the impact of the debt on current and future generations and what can be done about managing it.
It's an important question. It's one, though, most folks don't focus on. I mean, you know, debt is not the sexy topic, but it is one of the fastest growing parts of our budget is debt service, and it's paying for old obligations. And we've used debt too often in the past for what should really be pay-as-you-go expenses. So we're at a point now, we're an older state, we have an aging infrastructure, we have roads and bridges and tunnels and so on that are in need of not only repair but replacement. We don't have the debt capacity for it. So we need to have a more strict definition of what debt is, and we need to do a better job of what debt capacity we have, prioritizing it. Where are the greatest needs? You know, we had that bridge up over Lake Champlain. They had to blow it up because it was so full. It should never get to that point. We had the Tappan Zee Bridge.
Excuse me.
Key.
Thank you.
We don't have the money for it, and everybody knows it has to be replaced. So we have to have a sense of priority and limit debt to valid purposes. We need to also go back to letting the people vote on these debt issuances.
Yeah.
And that means some changes in statute and constitution.
Talk about authorities versus state debt.
Borrowing.
I mean, talk about...
We're down to about 6% of our debt now was voter approved. Most of it's now this backdoor borrowing. No accountability.
94% of this $60 billion, you know, $54 billion of it is backdoor authority. Excuse me, what are you doing? What is the legislature doing? And what is the governor going to do about
Well,
it?
no, the governor has said debt's a priority issue. He's got a lot on his plate. We want him to get to it.
Sure.
We have a specific debt reform proposal, and part of it is to really return more of the power to the people to vote on debt issuances, and to limit the ability of the authorities to issue that debt. We've also been now through our office, we comment on terms and conditions for some of these debt issuances. We've been a lot tougher on the authorities that want to go out to borrow. We don't have ultimate control, yes or no, but there's a lot we need to do with authorities to rein them in, in terms of the whole governance structure they're set up. They do some very important, public services that they provide, but there's not the kind of accountability. Nobody knows who's on these boards. The boards seem to be a permanent
What
government.
was it? The Erie Canal Authority leased this huge amount
It was
of
a big
land?
issue a couple of years
Oh,
ago. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
30 seconds. What are you working on? What's coming up? Is there any? Tell me.
Oh, well, there's a lot. Where charter schools is a big issue. We're doing audits on charter schools now. Legislature gave us the power. There was some controversy about that a few years ago. Related to the authorities, local development corporations, that even more so than IDAs have really been shadow governments and doing some things and spending money and borrowing money that we don't think is appropriate. So we've come up with a reform proposal that we want to see achieved. I'd like to see campaign finance reform be part of whatever ethics package they're going to do in Albany, and I want to see public financing so that everyday people can compete for office in New York State. So there's a lot going on, and we're going to keep a watchful eye on what's happening with state and local government and do the job that a controller is supposed to do.
Oh, thank you. My thanks to New York State Controller Thomas DiNapoli for being on the show. Join me next week when my guest will be New York City Council member Gail Brewer. See you here on CUNY TV. Excellent.
Thank you,
You're
sir.
good. You're smooth. Hello, I'm Doug Musio. Let us know what you think about this show. You can reach us at CUNY.tv. When you get there, click on the bar that says Contact Us and send your email. Whatever it is. Thanks, no thanks, obnoxious, do it. Send it.